Those are the people, those are my people, those people that got addicted to Ambien and don't know how to even talk about what they're addicted to because it is so uncommon.
Welcome to the Sober Spill podcast. I'm your host, Isabel. On this podcast, we have real conversations with people in recovery, their families, and organizations that pertain to this field. Today, I'm here with the host of the clinical side of our podcast, Jana Wu.
Thank you, Isabel. My guests will discuss best clinical practices, new emerging trends in substance use and mental health disorders, and how we can best take care of ourselves and our loved ones in recovery.
See you every Thursday.
And come spill with us soon. Hi, welcome to the Sober Spill. I'm Jana Wu, and today I'm extremely excited to be speaking with Laura Cathcart Robbins. Laura is the best-selling author of Stash, My Life in Hiding, a freelance writer, and a podcaster known for her vulnerability in discussing race, recovery, and identity. Laura is also the host of the popular podcast, The Only One in the Room. She's been featured on MSNBC, The Tamron Hall Show, C-SPAN, and her work has appeared in the New York Times, Oprah Daily, HuffPost, and more. Laura's New York Times Modern Love essay was turned into an episode of the Modern Love podcast. Laura currently sits on the advisory boards of the San Diego Writers Festival and the Buckley School's nationally recognized DEI board committee, and she facilitates writing workshops that look incredible. Her memoir, Stash, My Life in Hiding, is probably the best memoir I've ever read. I could not put it down. And I really think this book is for anyone that's ever thought about going to rehab, that's been to rehab, that's gotten divorced, thought about getting a divorce, struggled with an addiction or avoidance, lost themselves, found themselves again. For anyone that has a story to tell that hasn't been told yet, this memoir is for you. So thank you for joining our conversation today, and welcome, Laura. I think there was a lot of things that I found incredibly interesting, particularly in your book as a clinician, but just some other questions to get us started. I was actually really curious, did you take any sort of training to read your entire audiobook?
Oh my goodness. I wish I had. That was, it was something that they did not want me to read it. They usually hire actors, and I see why now. The acting training would have been really good reading the audiobook. But yeah, it was quite a production. It was me here in Los Angeles where I live. My producer and engineer were in the studio with me. The director was in New York, and it was 6 to 8 hours a day for a week of just going and then back to one, and we got to read that again, and can you just do that at the same level as the last one? And there was a different inflection that, it was not just reading the book. It was really, I guess it was like acting out the book. Like if we were shooting a show. So doing different takes and stuff like that, which I'm not used to because I'm not a performer.
It's incredible. It sounded so beautiful, though. I thought that you had like an acting background, but then I, didn't hear about that in the book. So I was like, that is incredible. That makes a lot of sense that it was so intensive. For our listeners that have not read it, Laura's description of rehab is the best one I've ever read. I started working in residential treatment or rehab in 2009. I spent much of my life in rehab, working, and the way you describe it is incredible, that I think many people will relate to. And I love that it felt like you were pulling a curtain back on a world that a lot of people never get to see. So I was curious if you'd gotten what feedback you've gotten in regards to that part, sort of bringing rehab out in the public.
Yes, I think that, for my experience in rehab, even though a lot of the things that I went through are pretty common, like, sleeping 4 to a room and meals at a certain time and, group recovery meetings and all that. Those are kind of universal, but the way that I viewed it, my experience there, like how much I hated it and how resistant I was to it the entire time, though that's not as universal. So a lot of people get there and they feel safe. A lot of people get there and have the best experience of their lives, or sometimes moms get there and they feel relieved that they don't have to take care of everybody for 30 days. People are taking care of them. so what I found is that a lot of people relate to the logistics of my experience there, but I find that less people actually relate to the feelings that I had while I was there, if that makes sense.
It does. That's interesting. I mean, I don't want to give away too much of the book, but there were so many parts that really struck me of being on the other side. When you're in the med line and you make eyes and your eyes start to water because this woman really sees you. And I feel like I've been on the other side where I see a client's eyes literally wake up. And
Mm,
especially with a substance like Ambien, which, before I listed again, the type, all the people I've recommended this book to, and particularly those that have Ambien addiction, because it is a very unique addiction to be addicted to a
sleeping
sedative,
pill. Yeah.
hypnotic sleeping
Yeah.
pill. So many years out, what do you make of that now, of your particular addiction?
Well, it's still pretty uncommon. I usually get shock first when people find out that that's why I went to treatment, was for an Ambien addiction. And then questions like, how can you be addicted to something that puts you to sleep? That doesn't make any sense. Like, wouldn't you just sleep if you took it? And so I have to go through how it affected me, and that it probably did affect me differently. And then also, like Ambien's a good drug for somebody to reset their system for, 5 to 10 days max. And beyond that, it's not supposed to be, anyway. I usually get people who are incredulous that this was why I went to treatment. And so I get put in the position of kind of having to defend.
Educate too.
Yeah, and educate, thank you, why it was important for me. But gosh, the people that do share my addiction, those are the best direct messages I get, because sometimes they're in treatment, sometimes they're just out. Sometimes people are like, how did you do it? Which obviously means they didn't read my whole book. They just started it and got excited that I am now beyond this 17 and a half years. So how did this happen for you? Um, because there was no easy way through it, obviously. If you read my book or if you're reading my book, you'll see that it is an arduous journey. But
Absolutely.
but yeah, those are my people, those people that got addicted to Ambien and don't know how to even talk about what they're addicted to, because it is so uncommon.
Absolutely. And especially when you went in and when you wrote this book, it was before the peak of the opioid crisis, where people really
Yeah.
saw that prescription drugs, things that a doctor are giving you that we knew sort of en masse that they should be questioned, and that while they may have a purposefulness, they can also be addictive. But that wasn't on the news every day at the time that you were writing it. It was like the dots were starting to come together. I That really speaks to a huge part of my job, as I really study and stay very close to fringe drugs. And a lot of times we hear people that do drugs that aren't as common say that they feel like they're the only one in the room when they
Yeah.
go to the rooms and they're like, I'm struggling with kratom. And people are like, why are you here? This is an AA meeting.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important that we talk about the different parts and the commonality of substances. Yours,
Mhm.
it is unique. I mean, Ambien is very unique, but there that feeling of being the only one in the room, and I'm curious how that played into your whole experience, and now looking back 17 plus years.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point. It's very isolating, and because it's less common or looked at as, maybe like it's not as addictive as fill in the blank. And a lot of people are addicted to Ambien and other substances, like they're addicted to alcohol and Ambien, or heroin and Ambien. So Ambien by itself is rare. And so in the 12-step recovery program that I'm in, um, you're supposed to identify as an alcoholic. That's the universal way to identify in that program. And I didn't identify with that at first. I don't really like alcohol. I drank, but I wasn't like, I never drank in
Can I
between.
just
Yeah.
interject though? Your description, again, not getting ready to judge, of the bar and the refilling bar, so many people will relate to. Your scientist of like measuring the
Yes.
levels and remembering, and like your GG for you know what, Grey Goose.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
was, so I think that
Thank
as a
you.
non-alcoholic, that
Yeah.
was like, when I read that again, I was like, oh, she nailed this. Like, it's like you were taking people's private thoughts that I've heard so much as a therapist. And I was like, they're on, it was incredible.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was actually my agent's favorite chapter was I forgot what it was called, but oh, Bar Rescue. That's what it was called after the TV show. Um but yeah, it's and I needed alcohol at that point to boost the Ambien. But the thing was if I didn't have Ambien, I didn't drink because I didn't like the way it impacted me. I didn't like the way it affected me. But at that point, because I was so progressed in my addiction, the Ambien by itself wasn't working anymore. So I had to have alcohol to boost it. And sometimes alcohol and Benadryl, both. That was really helpful, actually, toward the end.
It's scary though, actually. Benadryl can have a lot of contraindications with different substances. They're finding out they're actually researching that with kratom and certain things. So you're not alone in that one too. And I will just put out there if there are any listeners to your description of cough syrup is like bar
Mm.
none, best description of someone
Yes.
that is that hunger for those things. So I think there's so much power in being able to describe people's experiences that feel so shrouded in secrecy and shame. And I wanted to see if we could talk about that, from like a clinical perspective. We know that shame is one of the most powerful drivers behind addiction. It activates our threat response, it increases this secrecy and having to hold on, and it narrows our window of tolerance. We're able to really actually tolerate much less when we're holding that much. And that's where I think like substances become that fast relief. you know
Mm.
can you share some about how you are able to relate now to shame and sort of your process around it?
Yeah, I don't know how popular this is, um, but I've done a lot of work on like a lot of inventorying of my life and really looking at what happened, trying to look at it without placing blame, just like these are the circumstances in which I grew up. These are the choices I made as a result of those circumstances. And it seems to me that most of my shame was based in my drinking and using, which would be counter to what most people believe that I drink and use because of the shame.
Mhm.
I don't see my life that way. I don't think I was ashamed. I think I started drinking and using in a drinking I did, in my 20s and, probably in my 30s as well, just because it was fun. I liked it. The Ambien use, which came in my 30s as well, was survival. Like, oh, this is how I'm going to get through. I didn't have any shame about using Ambien those first couple years because thank God for it. It allowed me to get up with my kids. I could get a good night's sleep. I felt refreshed, and then as they say in my program, the solution became the problem.
Yeah.
And so very quickly, the Ambien became the problem. And the biggest problems when I had to use alcohol to wash it down with in order to get not even high anymore at the end, but just to feel kind of normal, which is a really just a desperation I wouldn't wish on anyone. And that was the source of my shame. The fact that I could not function without this. I was deeply ashamed of it. But I was more ashamed of going into a room full of people and saying, "Hi, I'm Laura and I'm an alcoholic." That was the deepest shame, the most profound shame I could think of. And and so I didn't want to do it. And that's, kind of why I stayed in it for a long time because I didn't know any solution that didn't involve me going into a room and having to say those words. And, eventually when I did surrender, I understood what was in front of me and I was very unhappy about it. Very
Mhm.
unhappy about it and really ashamed of that admission that I was going to have to make. That that was the shame. And then there was no medication for that shame because I was giving it up. That's
Mhm.
the only reason I had to make the admission that gave me the shame was because I was giving it up.
That is, I think, a really good description too of that experience. And it's interesting though too, again, because I think for a lot of us, you fall in love with people in the rooms, and that's what really releases the stigma. You see and respect people that are sitting right in front of you that are incredible. They're brilliant, and yet they are struggling just like you. And how was that sort of like that process, that alchemy for you in starting to really see, potentially see yourself in others, even though I do want to touch on too, you might have been the only one in the room that was being a black woman, for example, or depending on where you are, the only woman in the room.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't. I went to a men's meeting once by mistake, and I was the only woman in the room there. They were nice. They let me stay. But but yeah, I think other than that, there have always been women in the rooms where I've gone. But certainly I am usually the only Black woman in the meetings I go to. Every once in a while there's another one. I know a handful of people that were addicted to Ambien, and that's why they're in the rooms. Literally maybe 4 or 5. And occasionally we'll be in the same room or the same Zoom room, but most of the time we're not, and we are solo. So we identify the way everybody else identifies because it's respectful. And because, I just had to say there's, in the doctor's opinion, in the literature that's part of my program, it talks about how alcohol in any form. So I just think that Ambien is just another form of alcohol. And so if that kind of, Tetrising in my mind, I can lean into I'm an alcoholic because alcohol in any form is a problem for me. I actually do believe that. I don't think I could safely use any substance that would change me from the neck up. Um, but the experience of being the only one in the room is hard. It's one of the reasons I go to meetings, is so that if there is anybody else like me when they walk in, especially a woman of color, especially a Black woman, I'm visible. They
Mhm.
can see me, and that might let them come and take a seat. Sometimes, you walk into a room and you don't see anybody that looks like you, and you walk back out. It's a safety reason there too, right? You don't know what's going to jump off in that room when no one looks like you. Even though, I haven't encountered a hostile 12-step meeting ever. Everybody's pretty welcoming, but if you're new, you may not know that.
Well, I think too, it comes back to something I find really interesting. I grew up born in the late 70s, 80s, 90s. There wasn't very much ethnic diversity where I grew up. So I was often the only half Asian in the school, or the only one that had a Chinese father. And I was very aware of that. And I don't know. And I always wonder, for people that are raised around more dominant, where they are the dominant race, for lack of a better word, if they notice that when they walk in the room, oh, I'm the only one. And I have heard some people say, like, oh, I was the only one with red hair, and being very aware of that feeling. But I think when you grow up as that as part of your lens, um, it's just so innate to your wiring of noticing
Yes.
who's in the room, a- and that situation. So I'm curious, like, you have two biracial sons, or a mix. I don't know how they identify, but what do you make of that now too? Your experience and some of the differences you see now.
Well, I think, people in the dominant culture, uh, most of the time they don't think about it. Um, I my partner now, the one I met in treatment, that's a spoiler. He's white, and he's white, like he's from Utah. White.
I was picturing him like a fly fisherman or something, right? Like, yeah,
Yes, he
yeah.
is. Well, he was. He's a podcast producer now, but he was a fly fishing guide. Something I've never witnessed. I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know where it happens. I know it's cold. That's all I need to know because I'm not going there. But he um he has seen the world differently since he's been with me. Like he'll be the one to count when we walk into an auditorium, oh, there's 3 other Black people. Like he started seeing that. But I think unless, I'm on a school board, and we talk about, I'm on the DEI board there, and I equate it to being right-handed, which I am.
Mhm,
I never think about it. I
mhm.
never think about being right-handed. We go to the classrooms in this school, all the desks are right-handed. Like all the scissors are right-handed. There's nothing for left-handed people, but we just take it for granted that everything is made for us because we are the dominant culture. And I think unless you are left-handed, you see the world differently, right? Because then you're looking for different scissors. You're looking for a different desk that curves the other way. And so my job on this DEI board is to make sure I'm looking out for the left-handed people, as it were. Because and I do that in my recovery as well, is look out for the people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be race. It could be anybody that feels othered in the room.
Yep.
I have an antenna up for that. And yeah, my kids are biracial, but they look Black and they identify as Black. I mean,
Hmm.
they don't, like, we're not white, but it's
Hmm.
like they're like raised in Black culture and they look like they're Black men. America is not easy to let you forget you're Black when you look
Hmm.
Black. You're kind of reminded of it on a daily basis. But I think personally that the way that my family looks, this kind of blended family, is the way most families are going to look in 30 years. So it's the beginning of a new norm. But
Absolutely.
the current norm is the old guard that's still kind of clinging to this idea of a dominant culture that's really truly not, because there isn't really one dominant culture in America anymore. But the people in power are of a certain culture. So it looks more like that.
Yeah, I love hearing that though, and what you've been able to give your kids who, having that experience of multiple cultures in one
Mhm.
experience, having Malibu, having, you know, California life, California is a very diverse state, but I enjoyed that part of your book a lot, just hearing about your childhood and being
Mhm.
raised with a lot of Black artists. And I was actually reading the start of your book in Cambridge, Mass, and you talk about your childhood there. Yeah, when I was up there earlier this winter. And yeah, I think there's a universality that's changing a lot. And you're absolutely right. Like that's what statistics are showing us too, is that I think by 2030, almost like half populations will have some sort of like mixed family in the
Yeah.
States.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
It's
coming
almost like,
fast.
addiction. Like every family has some experience with addiction in one form or
Yep.
another. Almost every family, I think, and not necessarily with substances, but there are other addictions, and it touches a lot of people. And I think we're just really becoming aware of how diverse those experiences are too.
Absolutely. I think treatment, I've seen treatment evolve myself a lot since like 2009 and before that. But private treatment, it could really definitely do better, I think, at sort of integrating ways in which people that do feel othered or different can really reclaim all of themselves within
Mm,
that milieu. And I was curious,
yeah.
like, what do you make of that? Like, how do you bring all of yourself into an environment like you've mentioned, like the rooms that you go to are still predominantly white. I
Yeah.
know a lot of private treatment again is still predominantly white. And that's like there are huge systemic reasons why that's true that we can't shift right at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really hard. And it goes back, I think it's incumbent on people in the dominant culture to change that. There's nothing that I can do about that, but to call out, go into that private treatment facility if you're in a position of power, or you can speak truth to power and say, we've got to make a better effort to diversify, the optics in here. We only see, this particular socioeconomic patient, or from this or this from any particular area or any particular race. So we've got to make a concerted effort to diversify. And how do we bring in different? And it doesn't necessarily mean scholarships. It doesn't necessarily mean recruitment, but it can be, you can make an effort to give people access to what's available, because insurance pays for a lot of it.
Hmm.
And a lot of people of color have insurance. It's
Hmm.
just a matter of letting them know, and letting them know that this is also available to them. But it is something that I, as a Black woman, I can make a lot of noise about it, but it's usually not heard until someone from the dominant culture makes that same noise. We're actually seeing that going on in our country right at this moment.
Yeah, we
Hmm.
are. We really are. I mean, it is a huge shift right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for the way you answered that question too. I think it is a really important conversation to have. Um, I'm wondering too, this is a little different part of your identity. When we look at you, I hope it's okay to say, I mean, you're so beautiful and high functioning. And I work with a lot of women where I feel like their addiction is often missed because of those things. They are, and as I love this part, again, trying not to reveal too much, but they are the PTA presidents. They are the ones that are the class moms. They are keeping everything together. And that success and that external success, especially the motherhood success, can really mask some internal distress, and it can, I think, delay sometimes some interventions. What do you make of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there is a preference given to women in our society who do everything, who are busy moms, who are working busy moms, who are soccer moms, who, like, if you are doing something for other people, people other than yourself, and still taking care of yourself, you're still look put together, you're still throwing dinner parties, you're still shopping with the girls, then there is a way that these people are rewarded, um, that feels good. Maybe it feels like they're seen, right? Or I'll speak for myself. It felt like I was seen. Um, and like I thought about this the other day, like in my addiction, nothing lapsed. There wasn't a tennis lesson missed. There wasn't a nail appointment missed, but my memory lapsed a lot. Ambien is, it robs you of short-term memory. And so I had to get more and more um, exact and precise about what I was doing so that I didn't let the other stuff lapse. So, like, if I might make an appointment while high on Ambien that I would forget later, that was a disaster for me because I'm trying to keep up this image of someone who's accountable, someone who doesn't miss appointments, someone who doesn't cancel last minute. These are all the things that aren't admired, right, by people. Then you're looked at as flaky. Then you're looked at maybe, and already I was coming in from a deficit. I was Black. I don't have any further than a ninth grade education. Um, I was a stay-at-home mom, so I didn't have a career. So I needed to step it up and be above reproach.
Yeah,
And so
professional
all those
mom.
things, yeah, protected me. And when my memory started lapsing, then things started getting, I saw the end. I saw not the light at the end of the tunnel, but the dark at the end of the tunnel. Like the light was fading. I was not going to make it out. Uh, and and the truth was, and I know that you know this, is that I was killing myself. I
Mhm.
didn't know it, but taking as many pills as I was taking and washing them down with booze and occasionally with Benadryl is how one takes one's life. This is what you do if you don't want to wake up in the morning. And for my survival, I thought that I had to continue. I didn't think, it wasn't even a thought process. I knew that I had to continue taking these copious amounts of pills and washing them down with booze, or else I just wasn't going to make it. And so it really was a race against time for me. Um, and being so put together on the outside kept me from surrendering earlier.
Hi everyone, Pat McCarthy here. Managing withdrawal symptoms no longer means leaving home. Mountainside's new outpatient withdrawal program provides confidential professional support with daily check-ins from our psychiatric and clinical team. It's designed for your busy life, so you could heal without disruption. Find out more at mountainside.com.
What was it like for you when you realized that you had to surrender that image? I know for a lot of women, and it's heartbreaking because, sort of like when you talked about that internalized shame for your behavior with use, so many moms feel this incredible shame that if I get treatment or acknowledge I have a problem, then my kids are going to be social pariahs. No one's going to let them come over for play dates. People won't let their kids in the car with me. I'll never like get over that. Even if I come back from treatment, they'll always be thinking, what would you say to those moms that worry about getting help?
Well, for me, the admission or the surrender was catastrophe. Like that was it. I was saying goodbye to the world as I knew it. I knew that I would not come back to the same status socially, the same status amongst my mom's friends. I didn't know if I would come back to my home because I was getting a divorce at that time. I didn't know if I would come back to custody of my children. All these things were at stake. And, it was just this really just sharp, painful shame of and self-pity, like, well, now what do I have? I don't have anything. And yeah, maybe I brought this on myself, maybe. But but the truth is that I'm here now, and I didn't want to be, I fought so hard not to be there. And the first thing that was surprising to me was that none of my friends knew. Like, none
You
of
had
them
it
knew.
so put together. No,
Yeah.
yeah.
They didn't even know I went to treatment, which I thought I was gone for 30 days. I'd never been gone for 30 days. But they and the other thing was I was going through a divorce, so my communication was spotty anyway. So some of
Mhm.
it was blamed on that. Some of my demeanor was blamed on that. Like, oh, she's going through divorce.
Mhm.
This is really hard for her. She could cancel. She could not return a phone call. But and when they did find out, they kind of tried to argue with me about it again to like, but you're not an alcoholic. We never even see you drink and blah, blah, blah. And so I had to educate them and kind of defend my recovery. Like, I need to do this. You guys don't understand. Um, I know that the news spread through the school very quickly because I was the PTA president. And I had this dialogue in my head about that, or this idea in my head of them holding an emergency meeting and ushering in a new PA president while I was gone because they couldn't possibly have one that had checked herself into treatment for an addiction. And no one said a word about it. The only person who mentioned it afterward was the board chair, because I was then on the board.
Mhm.
Um, and we had set a goal for fundraising, and we had met the goal. And there was a champagne toast, and they brought in bottles of champagne. There were like livery waiters brought in like food and champagne. And she pulled me aside and said, "Do you want sparkling cider instead?" Very discreetly. And I was like, oh my God, yes, thank you. Because I was like, how am I going to fake this?
Toast, yeah.
Yeah. And that was the only mention of it. The only other mentions were women who also needed help, who
Yes.
found out that I had
Yeah.
gotten sober and came to me and asked if we could go to coffee or breakfast. But I didn't lose anything. Um, I didn't lose any of the things that I thought I might lose. And if I did, I didn't miss them because I can't remember them.
I really appreciate that. And that's what I often tell clients is that you don't know how this is going to come back and how this story will change as culture changes. I've even just seen that where in the past there was more shame. And then in 5 years later, people are asking you, how did you do it? How did you do it? You still don't drink? How did you do it? It's
Yeah.
it's the best anti-aging there is not drinking alcohol. It's better than anything, right? And people will do anything to anti-age, um, except for sometimes put it down. But my point is, I think it starts to look differently for people at different stages and phases of their life. And like you said, I don't think there is now a family in America that doesn't have someone not only in their life, but someone within their family that hasn't
Mm.
struggled, whether it's aunt, uncle, cousin. I don't think you could find someone that doesn't have anyone that's never struggled with some sort of behavioral or substance use.
Mhm. I agree. There's this thing that they say in my meetings, which is alcoholics can't do anything in moderation except for recovery. Like, this is that's the only thing that we're like, oh, maybe I'll just do a little of this, but everything else is full on.
Full force. Yeah,
Yeah,
not moderate people.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it is for people that are new to recovery or considering um, coming into recovery, and I consider abstinence and recovery two different things. Abstinence being, you just put down the substance, which is fantastic. And God, I wish I could have just put down the substance and been done with it. I would have done that. So if anybody can do that, that's amazing. Keep doing that. But then recovery was the thing that was important for me, so that the things that created the need for me to drink and use were no longer a factor in my life. Like if I was anxious, which doesn't happen very often, honestly. My baseline is I wake up pretty happy. I sleep. I go to bed very happy, like very content, I should say. Not happy like I'm singing, but super content. I don't have the racing mind. I don't wake up in the middle of the night with thoughts about like the worst things in the world. But there are things in my life that do cause anxiety. Those are the things which I know exactly how many seconds it would take for the pill to reach my bloodstream to quell that anxiety. I like to do that. I think that would be a nice way to deal with it, a nicer way than the way I deal with it. But the truth is that way got me into a full-blown, very progressed addiction that didn't allow me to do anything else, including be a mom to my kids who are grown now and need me. I don't know if they need me just as much, but my goodness, they call me every day, like 3 times a day, which is so great for boys.
It is. That's
Like to call, they text,
yeah.
mine call. I'm very happy about that. But so my point was that because I am still prone to these things, to sadness, to anxiety, to anger, to resentment, for me, I need to be in recovery in order to deal with these things as they come up, which is why I can't just be abstinent. But if I could just be abstinent, I would. That would be it for me.
Well, I love that you are able to bring this book in and reach a lot of people that might not feel connected to 12-step programs. I feel like you open the door really wide to share your experience in a way that's not proselytizing or telling people how they should do it. Like it's very, very open, and that we need that. I really think we're in a world of AI. I think real memoirs are going to become like the salve we need right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially like the most authentic, memoirs of telling this is what I really felt inside. Like AI can't replicate our real human experience and what we really feel inside. So I loved this because my other favorite memoir was I was drinking a love story. And that was like written in 1997, a long time ago, right? And yours, yeah, Carolyn Knapp. And that I think was such a strong voice for so many women, like generations of women. And then your book, like I love in the beginning, you write about why you wrote it. I would love to just read that one sentence, like right from the beginning, just of as an avid reader, I scoured bookstores for memoirs during that time, desperate for stories of mine written by women who look like me. I found none. And I think there's so many applications. Like you're talking about women that are struggling with Ambien, mothers, Black women, women of color, all different types of women, women that are getting divorced.
It's a big
There are
one.
so many, women that have reinvented themselves, because that's
Yeah.
a huge narrative in your story too, of reinventing yourself and then getting sober and reinventing yourself again. Like,
Yeah.
it's incredible how many lives you can live in one. Um,
I love
can
that.
I ask a little bit about your invention? Because a lot of our listeners, they are sober, getting sober, and realizing they want to do something different. And you had mentioned you were PTA president, you were raising your kids, and now you have a full-fledged, incredible writing career and podcast career. How did you do it? Because so many women want to, but it's terrifying.
Yeah, it is terrifying. Before I say how I did it, I just want to preface it by acknowledging my privilege, because one of the things that allowed me to do what I did is I have the time to do it. I'm not at a 9 to 5 job. And my kids are grown. They're not running around and I'm not driving them places. And I realize that those things are precious. And I don't want to make it sound like I just went to work and you can too, regardless of what your life looks like. I mean, everybody can do what they can, but I just like to acknowledge my privilege, because when I didn't have that privilege, I would be like, well, that's good for you to say. You have time to do all this. It's like when people lose weight and they're like, oh, you have a private chef and you have a private gym and blah, blah, blah. That's the privilege, right? So anyway, I the way that I did it was actually, I did not want to be a writer per se. I've always written, I've always read. I love writing. I didn't think that would be a career for me. I moved to Los Angeles in 1988 to direct commercials. That's why I moved here. And I've always been fascinated with like advertising, publicity. That's the career I went into. When I closed my PR firm, I was a mom for, an at-home mom, until my kids were out of the house. And when I got sober, I lost the ability to read and write for pleasure. And it just like left. And I was like, well, hold on, don't panic. You just got sober. You were really progressed. You were very ill. This might take a minute to get back. And so I kind of waited around for 5 years for it to come back. And when I say read or write for pleasure, like I couldn't read a paragraph of a book, not even one that I loved, without my mind snapping shut. And I couldn't write anything like,
Your brain was really healing, though. Do you look back now? Your brain, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You get that. But I started taking writing classes about 5 years in, because I was hoping to kind of get the juices flowing again. And I figured if I had to write, if I had a deadline, then I would write. And if I was in a class, I'd have to read my peers' work. So I'd have to read, actively read something. And so I took class after class after class. And as I mentioned, I don't have a formal education. So like these classes became my education. And about 8-9 years into those classes, I wrote 30 pages and a query for Stash. A query is a pitch letter, a submission letter for an agent. And I wrote it on a lark. There was a contest going around on Instagram for unagented Black authors. I didn't even get in, but I had written it. And then my dear, dear friend, Holly Whitaker, who wrote a book called Quit Like a Woman, she read the pages and kind of freaked out, and then sent them to her agent, who's now my agent, who signed me and said, how quickly can you write this book? Prior to that, I had started writing articles, because that's what I had been told to do. I had started, looking into starting a podcast, because I needed to build an author's platform. So while I was writing Stash, that was not the beginning. I had spent a couple years just writing and submitting and getting published, taking a podcasting class so I could learn more about it. And then I started podcasting, and our podcast got really successful, which it could have not, but it just happened to. And I worked with my partner, Scott. He was my producer. And then when Stash got sold in 2021, I just focused on that, not realizing that all these other authors out there never stop writing. If you're writing a book, once you turn that book in, you got to be working on your next one. I didn't know that. So now I wrote 2 books last year. One of them sold. I wrote 3. One of them sold. Wow. One's going out on submission. Like, I'm just doing what everybody else did now. I love it. I absolutely love it. People say that writing is a chore. I don't find it that way. But like you said, Jana, I healed my brain. I healed my pathways because they were so damaged. And I couldn't do the thing that is my very basic identity, which is a reader and a writer. Not necessarily as an author, but someone who reads and writes. That's how I identify. And that was stripped from me. And so I'm so grateful to have gotten that back and to have continued to work. I took every rejection as a call to action and kept going and kept going and kept going. And I learned that in my 12-step program, that perseverance, that discipline. I learned that there.
Well, I'm glad you kept it up. I'm excited to see your new books. Are you allowed to say the title of what sold so we can look for it eventually?
I Want Your Life. It's actually autobiographical fiction.
Oh, okay.
So, I wrote 3 novels. So I Want Your Life is the one that sold. and that'll be out in 2027. And Something in Common is actually autobiographical fiction, again, set in the world of recovery. So it's about an affair in the rooms of recovery.
Oh, I think that will appeal to a lot of our audience. I'm glad you mentioned the topic. Okay, we do have to talk about that because I'm sure you've probably heard there are so many antiquated expressions that therapists probably said when you and Scott S were getting together. Two sickies don't make a welly,
Yeah.
Romeo rehab or rehab Romeo. Like, I mean, what do you make of I will say there is this little thought that a lot of these relationships won't make it, and you guys have made it. So,
So weird. We're such an anomaly, honestly. Like, I mean, we weren't a rehab hookup. Like, there was no hooking up in rehab, but we were obviously very attracted to each other. There was a kiss.
I was gonna say the cow kiss. Like there was I mean, that would count
There
in
was
my
a kiss.
rehab. That would
Yes,
definitely count as a like
yes.
that's some physical contact, the cow kiss, the
Right. I
out
mean, there were
watching.
so many times where we could have gotten kicked out, honestly, because we
Mhm.
were always
I
sitting together.
totally. I thought
Um,
that the entire time. I was like,
yeah,
"Where's the milieu staff?" Like writing this up. But then you do mention they were taking notes. So,
they were
yeah.
taking notes, and we still marvel at, like, how come they let us leave together? Like, they never do that.
That
Never
was a
do that.
really
Yeah, it was
interesting part of the story,
quick.
but it ended up being such a gotcha, I mean,
Yes, yes.
but that was a very interesting, yeah, I don't want to say too much so people
Yeah.
can read it, but that
So
was
this is
wild.
what I think about why Scott and I have lasted for almost 18 years. And I think it's because we dated each other for 6 years. And we had a batting order. And the top of the batting order was our recovery. Our respective recoveries came first, always, no matter what. Our respective families, his daughters, my sons, my parents, his parents, came second, no matter what. And then everything else, including each other, came third, whatever that looks like. So what that looked like was, if my kids wanted to snuggle with me, but it was time for me to go to a meeting, I had to go to the meeting. And I didn't get to snuggle with my kids until afterward. But if I'd gone to the meeting and my kids wanted to snuggle with me and Scott called, he had to wait because my kids wanted to snuggle with me. So we kept the batting order like that. We still do. We still have that same batting order, but we did not live together. We did not rush it. We really dated and got to know each other for 6 years, which is a long time. But we wanted to make sure that my boys and his girls were really good with this union. We did like some trial vacations, we went to Arizona to a water park with all of us, like the second year we were dating, separate hotel rooms, everything. We didn't want anybody to be uncomfortable. And then like at the fourth year, we took a road trip. Like, so we did like these little tests and everybody's getting along. But then there were frank conversations to have with my boys and with his girls. Like, how would you feel about us living together and, Scott living in the house with us? And, we took the feedback, which was fine. I think really my boys just wanted to see me happy and
Hmm.
they knew that he makes me happy. And at that point, 6 years later, they didn't feel threatened by him. And again, I'm aware that that's a long time, but we felt like it was really important to wait until it was the right time. And we weren't sure before that. Maybe this is the right time. But just because you have to move out of your place doesn't mean we should move in together. We
Hmm.
should wait until it's innate, till we both intuitively know, like, this is where we're gonna live. This is our house. And so we did that.
Yeah, it sounds like a very mindful, moderate approach. And like you were talking about, sometimes it's thought of like people in early or people that are struggling with substance aren't moderate people. We used to say addicts and alcoholics aren't moderate people. We try not to
No.
label that now. But yeah, so it sounds like for you, it was a very mindful, moderate approach to the relationship, very thoughtful and eyes wide open, as opposed to sort of before with the Ambien of just living in that fog. And
Yeah.
I really think it's so important that we go back to what you're saying too about your brain healing. We see sometimes after horrible, tragic accidents or even, cancer recovery, how people muscles can regrow. People can learn to rewalk sometimes. And our brain, same thing with neuroplasticity, we can learn to rewire our brain. But with taking especially like the abuse, the alcohol, the drugs away from that and allowing the brain to heal, it's
Mhm.
incredible. And then what I love is hearing about your consistency in the writing of actually exercising your brain too, challenging your brain,
Yes.
keeping that thought going. And that
Mhm.
really is brain healing. And the other part of brain healing so important is actually just open, honest, sober conversations. It
Mm.
really absolutely does heal our brain to have those conversations with people completely clear, not inebriated. It
Yeah.
really is amazing.
Thank you. I agree. I think I mentioned Holly Whitaker before, who is not sober through 12-step recovery, but is sober and in recovery. And she and I have these amazing conversations where we share what we bring to our recovery with each other and how we bring it without judgment of the way that the other is in recovery. A lot of people took her book, Quit Like a Woman, as kind of a manifesto against Alcoholics Anonymous, but um, I didn't take it like that at all. And I think if you read it, that you wouldn't see it that way. But I did just want to stress that I talked a lot about 12-step recovery, but there are other ways to get to recover. This just happens to be the way that works for me best. I'm I'm really clear for me that it's my solution, and I'm really clear for me that I am an alcoholic based on everything that I have read and done. Like, this is my diagnosis. So I don't struggle with that, and I find myself there, and it's absolutely fine. But if someone is listening and they are struggling with where they fit in, there might be another place for you to find the same thing that I found.
Absolutely. I mean, we definitely see there are so many different pathways to
Mhm.
recovery now. For a lot of people, it is different spiritual pathways or medication, with as treatment, and so there's a lot of different, yeah, ways to do it. Well, in closing, I was curious, we could ask you, you spent some time with clinical providers, therapists, and I love that and the Utox provider, I don't want to call her Utox lady, but the woman that was doing your urine screenings.
Oh, yeah,
What would
Veronica.
I love that whole description, her nails, everything. Oh my
Yeah.
God, and you not putting your purse down. I'm like, I've seen that all. Like not putting down the nice purse in the bathroom. And what would you want to say to clinical providers? What message did you want to give people?
I would say that everybody that's been trained to work with people that are addicts or alcoholics or struggling with substance abuse disorder that I've encountered are amazing. Honestly, like, everybody is accepting, non-judgmental, everybody that I've encountered rather, um, and has been incredibly helpful to me. The physicians in my life, and not that they're not helpful, but they don't seem like, I went through this whole thing of like making an amends to my doctor. He prescribed me Ambien. I abused it. I went back to him and came clean, as it were, and told him everything. And it was like this really kind of like embarrassing, shameful, like painful conversation for me. And then like a year later, I was going to Africa with my kids and my mom. And he's like, well, let me give you some painkillers. I'll give you Oxy, and I'll give you Ambien, and I'll give you this and this. And like and just in case. And I'm like, dude, don't you
I
remember?
I have a history of addiction. Yeah.
Right. But he didn't equate that
Yeah.
conversation with what he could give me.
Mhm.
And that seems to come up for me a lot. I told all my medical providers that I was addicted to Ambien and other substances, and that I should not be prescribed things recklessly. I've had surgery, and I did get Vicodin. I got a
Mhm.
bottle of Vicodin. I think I got 10 afterwards. I took one, and that was it. So, I mean, I'm not saying don't take medication if you're in pain, but yeah, I mean, don't overly prescribe me anything, because I might be tempted to take it. And they just don't seem to be educated in the same way that the practitioners in the, like the therapists the people that work in treatment centers are. And I don't know if it's less time spent in medical school on addiction practices. I don't know what it is, but there seems to be a gap. So my suggestion, which is what I did after this happened, was to reinforce to my physicians and my dentists this, and then say, if, I have somebody on standby, or I'm going to record the conversation while I'm in the office, just to make sure that we are on the same page, to hold them accountable. That I've said this, it's not easy for me to say. I don't want to have to continually repeat it and or educate you or defend my recovery. You should go educate yourself now. So,
Absolutely.
but I never found that with the therapist I was recommended. Like, everybody else seemed to really get it.
I appreciate hearing that so much. And we work with a lot of doctors that are trying to change that narrative. And I actually speak to some medical schools about that. So, not just about bedside manner, but about how to be with your clients if they're telling you about substances you don't know or understand, so that you don't just whip out Google in front of them. And because a lot of times our patients are put in this place of having to be the educators of what, and not that every provider can know every single substance, but how do you stay curious and respectful towards your patient that's trying to tell you something, and really listen, and then do your due diligence to find out, are there any contraindications? What is the best way to treat this? How can I find the resources to get them what they need? Because they just told me something and it's important.
Yeah.
So I love, thank you for closing us out with that. I feel so appreciative of your time, Laura, and congratulations on your books. We will look for those. Tell everyone where we can find you.
Yeah, I hang out in one place. It's on Instagram. I'm at Laura Cathcart Robbins. Cathcart is CATHCART. Robbins is ROBBINS, all one word. It's also my website, lauracathcartrobbins.com. So those are the two places to find me. I do answer all DMs. So if you have one, if you message me, I'll answer you back.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Now I'm going to DM you. Thank you so much.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, Mountainside can help. Call 860-365-6764 to speak with our caring treatment team.